international movies that may have come here, but these movies don't mean anything. They have no intrinsic value.
I'm like 2 months into this program.
Because if suffering has no meaning, if suffering has no purpose...
From Hollywood icon to spiritual seeker, Shia LaBeouf had it all until he walked away, gun on table, contemplating the end. His journey from the brink of darkness reveals the emptiness behind fame's glittering facade. This is the raw, unfiltered story of how one of Hollywood's biggest stars found redemption through an unexpected encounter with faith, a transformation the industry never saw coming.
What I feel when I went to Oakland and went to like, and by the way, there's a very incredible version of that as well that's super activating and very emotional that I've experienced up there with Father Bobby. There's also, and Father Peter, but there's also this, something that happened, you know, Christ the King in Oakland does a Latin Mass every day of the week. And it feels like it's not being done to sell me on anything. And it feels almost like I'm being let in on something very special.
But beneath the accomplishment lay a man lurching into addiction, self-destructive behavior, and spiritual hollowness. Mark 8:36, as the scripture says, "For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul?" This verse is a perfect description of Shia's experience in Hollywood. Billy Joel in 1983 amassing wealth and fame, but with a crumbling inner life. The very industry that brought him fame was the same one that was allowing his self-destruction.
No one knew who I was previous. I mean, I was just living for more achievement, more goals, more animal instinct, pleasure-seeking, selfish, self-centered, dishonest, completely inconsiderate of other people. If I was a nice guy, it was for an end. I had no charity in my life. There was no... You know, I was a tolerant man. You know, these things aren't Christian. You know, tolerance is a strictly Jewish thing.
The Hollywood machine had handed Shia everything but what he actually needed: purpose, meaning, and real connection. Instead, it reinforces the very behaviors that were pushing him deeper into the dark.
So I land in New York. I'm coming back from Ireland.
Okay.
Visiting my girl. And in Ireland, like when you go to Rome, you have spaghetti. You know, you go to Ireland, you drink whiskey.
Yes.
So I had been drinking a lot of whiskey in Ireland. I come back, I land, and it's the World Cup. And you drink a lot of whiskey during the World Cup, it seems.
Is that one of the traditions of the World Cup?
Yeah, it makes it all fun. Okay. So I'm sitting at a bar, and I'm drinking a whole lot of whiskey. And I'm watching this World Cup. It's South Korea versus...
By 2020, Shia was at his lowest point. After multiple arrests, public meltdowns, and professional setbacks, he was isolated and considering suicide.
Do you make your suffering useful? How can you make your pain useful? That's be the question that I would ask anybody, because I think the answer to that question is really the answer that everyone's chasing. Because if suffering has no meaning, if suffering has no purpose, then this life sucks. This is just a shit life if suffering has no purpose or meaning. And everyone is going to experience suffering. That's what separates me from this machine.
Yet this is often where God meets us, at our lowest. We're reminded in Psalm 34:18, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." To Shia, that divine intervention arrived from an unexpected source, a role-playing Padre Pio, a Catholic saint who was said to have the stigmata, the wounds of Christ. But more importantly, it was through a community that truly loved him.
Well, I mean, you know, if you look at religion for what it is, which is a creative act, right? Religion is man-made. We know this. So in that regard, it's artwork. It's really strong art. And so if you look at it that way and you see it as something man-made, then you start thinking about, well, okay, well, I can craft my own. And so that's what I've been doing in my life, is sort of crafting my own idea or conception or religion and converting into my own religion, right? So like I've gone about it like a Wikipedia strategy. You know, like Religiopedia, or, you know, I'm just taking, you know, the good bits from every different thing and sort of making an amalgamation of something I can get down with.
This neatly sets up the purpose of the film for Cronin. When the glamour and glitz of Hollywood stardom offered no emotional satisfaction to Shia, both he and the documentary realized it was time to seek out some regular humanity. But what he didn't know was that God was working behind the scenes on his redemption story.
No one showed up. My mother, my father, no one showed up. Manager, friends, no one showed up. Week 2, same thing. So I'm sitting in this room And even the person who's like therapizing me, she's starting to feel like this. She's empathizing with where I'm at. Everybody else in the room got a dude who, like, you know, they got people showing up for them. And I don't have nobody showing up for me.
In parentheses, and I think one way to get there was to hang out with Franciscan friars who had a whole other lifestyle. For probably the first time in his life, he felt real community, people who sought from him nothing but that he be there. Jesus promises in John 8:32, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." For Shia, this was transformative, meeting the Bible, especially the Gospels.
Yes, I'd like to argue because it
Right.
made me feel like I was in power.
Right, yeah.
I'd like to be contrarian.
Yeah.
I like to sit with a bishop and then put you on your heels because that would make me feel powerful,
Right,
which I find most secular people enjoy, the control of it.
yeah.
Because so much of life is uncontrollable, to feel in control feels good. So I was that guy. I come up with these arguments. My mother had a spirituality that was sort of undefined.
She was Jewish, right, your mother?
Yeah, but like hippie Jewish, like
For a man who had spent years desperately trying to control his own fate, only to watch it careen out of control, the message of surrender, of letting go of control, struck a powerful chord. The thing that makes Shia's testimony so surprising is, of course, the difference between the life he used to lead and the faith he has taken on. The change was not only spiritual, it shifted how he saw himself, how he saw others, and how he saw his career.
one of the most respected, beloved saints that ever graced the earth. Some people in Italy don't carry a Jesus on them; they carry a Pio on them.
Yeah, right.
You go to certain places in Italy, and he's everywhere. He's Elvis, and I mean that in the best way. And you recognize rightly that this is more than a role. That this is Pio's interesting. Because Pio also saved my life. I mean, it's not just like a...
2 Corinthians 5:17 aptly describes this kind of transformation. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone, the new is here. Shia's experience shows how even the glitter of Hollywood loses luster compared to the love of Christ. The industry had guaranteed fulfillment through fame, wealth, and pleasure, only to deliver emptiness instead. Christ gave something the world could never give, real peace and purpose.
Well, I initially was just sharing it with my buddy, yeah? So it was initially just one buddy to another buddy, yeah? We both create, we're both creators, but it was never going to be necessarily a movie. We had been chasing a narrative, but it initially started just sharing notes, sharing stories, because we have similar sensibilities, and we had sort of talked about these things in the past, and then it started taking a shape as a narrative and was encouraged by Alma to be a narrative. And the more she would encourage me, the more hopeful I felt.
The most remarkable of all, perhaps, is that Shia now sees this suffering as purposeful, a divine megaphone that led him to faith. His testimony obliterates the prosperity gospel narrative that faith is an end to hardship. Instead, he embraces a higher truth that suffering with meaning is far better than pleasure without purpose. And through his conversion, Shia is now a reluctant critic of the industry that made him famous. His testimony shines a light on the moral emptiness behind Hollywood's glamour.
I go, there's no evolution here. Why?
Right.
And it's insecurity.
Right.
You know, and I was that way. I was so competitive. My acting wasn't collaborative. It was competitive.
Mm-hmm.
It was a sport.
Mm-hmm.
And my life was this way.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what created the insecurity and the jealousy that put hands on this woman.
Mm-hmm.
The man that was involved in that relationship was constantly comparing himself to other people.
Mm-hmm.
Shia's critique of Hollywood's vacuousness calls to mind the words of Jesus in Matthew 16:26. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? The actor who, by worldly measure, had it all, fame, fortune, and critical acclaim, deemed them all worthless without Christ. His testimony is an exhilarating reminder of the spiritual bankruptcy that our culture's obsession with celebrity, wealth, and status must ultimately result in.
Nasta Ronco and Luke Turner. You may have seen activity today. Now that leads me to my first question. So what have you guys been up to today?
We've been in the elevator for since 9 a.m.
Yeah?
Speaking to a lot of people, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Any highlights so far?
It's been really political in there.
Yeah.
Shia LaBeouf's journey from Hollywood star to follower of Christ reminds us that no one is beyond God's reach. His story is an invitation to all believers, non-believers, to reflect on what gives purpose and satisfaction in life.
Well, you first, well, man, I mean, it depends on the day, but you commit to something, and then, you know, like, for me, this is a big chunk of my life, how I, like, identify with the world and everything. You know, I define myself based on what I do. Most people do. You are what you do, you know, what you create. So, like, my pride is on the line.
Yeah.
So once I say yes, you know, everything's riding on the day. It feels like life and death.
So you had to literally go through like Marine, go through the
oh
basic
no,
training.
No
and all
way,
that stuff?
no, not literal. No,
Okay.
Marines are Marines, man. You can't. There's no way. Even if you have a year to act it, you're not a Marine. No way.
Wow.
But you get as close as you can, and you hang out with a bunch of Marines, and you try to like empathize as much as you can.
Yeah.
In a culture that idolizes fame and success, Shia's testimony provides a radical subtext that we find true fulfillment through subjugation to a force larger than ourselves. His searing honesty about Hollywood's hollowness and his own shatteredness makes his pilgrimage of faith even more riveting.
Making a movie called Tax Collector, chopping it up, talking about what our dreams were as little kids. He'd always dreamed of having a theater program. We met some guys who were from this neighborhood, a guy named Bone Sloan, another guy named Bo Jangles, Bow Wow, a couple other people who sort of run this neighborhood and here every day. They said, how can you be a service to this area? I only really know how to do one thing. And so me and Bobby came down here, sort of built this thing up, and it's been flourishing for the last 10 months.
Slauson Rec Theater Company.
Yes, sir.
And you said somewhere, you know, all we're trying to do is just...
As Isaiah 55:2 asks, why pay money for what is not bread and your labor for what fails to satisfy? This question runs through Shia's life. After years of pursuing the Hollywood version of success, he found that only Christ could fill the empty places in his soul. His testimony is an indictment of our celebrity-obsessed culture and a powerful witness to God's transformative love.
This is kind of part of being a man.
I think so.
I think part of learning is dying. I think part of learning is you got to die a little bit. Because what is learning? Learning is me giving up my old ideas. Those ideas have to die for me to be open to some new. And so me learning how to be a better man, I had to die a little bit.
And you don't know what to put in there. And
Right.
You just got to find the right food.
Right.
You got to find the right food.
And I was lucky to have like some good dudes in my life at the time when it hit.
Whether you are a lifelong follower of Shia or someone wandering aimlessly through a world of emptiness, his humanity gives us hope to find what truly matters after we lose everything, and that even in our darkest hours, God meets us there, poised to transform our hurt into healing, our hurt into blessing. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, comment below, and subscribe for more content that makes faith famous. And who can forget, no matter how long you've wandered, God's love is always reaching out to welcome you home.